turn the volume up yet. If this story is real, you don't want to hear it clearly. Because the people who did, they never slept peacefully again. In 2003, a small, isolated mountain town began reporting something unusual. This wasn't a simple sighting of some strange animal. It was a pattern, a deeply unsettling clockwork pattern. Every single night at precisely 2:14 a.m., the dogs across the entire town would start screaming. I don't mean barking or howling. I mean screaming. A sound of pure, primal terror that would cut through the quiet night air. And then, just as suddenly as it started, silence. Complete and total silence. Not just the dogs. The wind would die down. The chirping of crickets would cease. Even the distant hum of a passing car would vanish. It was as if the night itself was holding its breath, terrified of making a sound. At first, the locals tried to ignore it. Mountain towns are used to strange noises, coyotes, bears, the wind playing tricks. But this was different. This felt wrong. The feeling grew stronger when people started finding footprints. And these weren't from any animal they recognized. They weren't human either. The prints were too long, unnaturally narrow, and showed an extra joint in the foot where no joint should ever be. But the strangest part, tracks always stopped abruptly in the middle of a trail or a field or even a paved road. They never led away. It was as if whatever made them had simply stood up and vanished into thin air. First person to truly see it was a local forest ranger, a man who had spent his entire life in those woods. He described the experience with a chilling clarity. He said he didn't notice movement at first. He noticed an absence, a patch in the forest ahead where the light just didn't behave correctly. The trees looked flatter, two-dimensional. The sense of depth felt wrong, distorted. And then something stepped out from that warped space. It was tall, easily over 2 meters. Its frame was impossibly thin, yet it didn't look weak or fragile. It radiated a sense of coiled power. As it stood there, its head tilted slowly to the side at an angle that looked painful, unnatural. The ranger said it felt like it was listening, not with its ears, but listening directly to his thoughts. He didn't run. He couldn't. He said his body simply refused to obey. Later, trying to explain the feeling, he said, "It didn't feel like I was being hunted. It felt like I was being evaluated." He resigned the very next day, packed his bags, and left the town without another word to anyone. To the ranger's report, things escalated. The authorities, though publicly dismissive, became concerned enough to install a network of cameras throughout the surrounding forest. These weren't your standard trail cams. They were military grade, with advanced infrared and motion-triggered sensors, designed to capture anything that moved in the dark. But they didn't catch it moving. That was the most terrifying discovery. They caught it standing still. In one frame, the creature would be 100 meters away, a blurry figure at the edge of the clearing. In the very next frame, taken just a fraction of a second later, it would be 50 meters closer. It wasn't walking. It wasn't running. It was just nearer, as if the concept of distance, of moving from point A to point B, simply didn't apply to it. It was breaking a fundamental rule of physics. When enhanced image finally captured its face, or what passed for one, the surface was impossibly smooth, like polished bone with no discernible mouth or nose. But where the eye should have been, there were 2 deep, dark indentations. Here is where the real nightmare begins. The technicians reviewing the footage noticed that sometimes those eye sockets were higher up on the face, sometimes they were lower, sometimes one was higher than the other. It was as if the creature was constantly rearranging its own features, perhaps based on who was looking at it or what it wanted them to feel. The official report labeled the incident as a misidentified bear, and then immediately classified every file, every photograph, every testimony. The case was officially closed. But one technician, haunted by what he had seen, had secretly made a backup of the data. He spent weeks poring over the files, and he noticed something that everyone else had missed. A detail so subtle, yet so horrifying, it changed everything. In most of the frames where the creature was visible, it was facing the camera, being observed. But in a few select frames, scattered throughout the recordings, it was facing asterisk behind asterisk the camera. It was looking directly at the person who was watching the footage. Shortly after this discovery, a new phenomenon began in the town, the knocking. It started with one family, then another, then another. It was always the same. 3 slow, deliberate knocks, and it always happened at exactly 2:14 a.m. But the knocking never came from the front door or the back door. It came from inside the house, from deep within the walls, from the ceiling above their beds. No one ever answered. Those who experienced the knocking moved away, often within a week. One family left so abruptly they abandoned everything. Furniture, clothes, family photos left on the walls. There was still food on the dining room table. Their next-door neighbor said the last thing the father told him before they sped away in the middle of the night was, "It learned where we sleep." Years passed. The town became a shadow of its former self, its story a hushed local legend. Then a single, heavily redacted document from the classified file leaked online. Most of it was blacked out, but one paragraph survived. It read, "The entity does not appear to hunt for sustenance. It primarily observes and analyzes behavior. It demonstrates a pattern of returning to locations associated with high levels of fear." The town still exists on a map, but the population has been cut in half. The remaining locals live by a simple, unspoken rule. If you're ever there and you hear knocking in the middle of the night, don't get up to check the door. Don't listen to the walls. The very first thing you do is check the time. Because if it's to 14 in the morning, it's already close enough to know your name, to know your routine, and to know your fears. Then something like that, it doesn't need to knock to come inside.